5 years after the Paris climate deal, the UN Secretary-General has told a virtual summit that all countries should declare a climate emergency until the world reaches carbon neutrality. China is among countries announcing new measures. The US has started distributing its first Pfizer and BioNTech COVID vaccines following their approval by regulators on Friday. The authorities say they'll start vaccinations on Monday. 7 aid trucks belonging to the International Committee of the Red Cross have arrived in the capital of Ethiopia's Tigray province. It's the first international assistance since fighting broke out more than a month ago. And talks between the UK and the EU are continuing in Brussels on a post-Brexit trade and partnership deal. Britain is also ramping up preparations for a no-deal, with 4 naval vessels on standby to protect fishing waters.
A court sentences Hezbollah member Salim Jamil Ayash to 5 terms of life imprisonment for plotting to kill former Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri in 2005. Taiwan orders a new fleet of Coast Guard ships as it strengthens its defenses against a growing threat from Beijing. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says trade talks between Britain and the European Union are not progressing. And the Democratic Republic of Congo's lower house of parliament votes to remove its speaker, handing President Felix Tshisekedi a major victory in a power struggle.
Authorities in Iran have executed a dissident journalist convicted of instigating anti-government protests. State-run media outlets report Ruhollah Zam was put to death on Saturday. They say he received a death sentence in June for inciting protesters and distributing misinformation in December 2017. Citizens staged rallies across the country that year. They even criticized Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The BBC has reported the journalist ran a popular anti-government website on a messaging app in France. It also reports the network shares videos of protests and damaging information about Iranian officials. Human rights organization Amnesty International had urged authorities in Tehran not to execute Zam. The organization says the death penalty is used in the country as a weapon of repression. Hong Kong media mogul and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai has appeared in court on charges of violating Beijing's national security law. The legislation is aimed at cracking down on anti-government activities in the Chinese territory. Lai founded the Apple Daily newspaper, which is known for criticizing Beijing. He was indicted on Friday for allegedly colluding with foreign forces and endangering national security. On Saturday, prosecutors claim Lai committed the alleged offenses in media interviews and around 1,000 comments on Twitter. The court denied Lai bail and adjourned the case until April 16th next year. He will most likely remain in detention until then. In court, Lai greeted supporters sitting in the gallery from time to time by raising his hand. After the session, supporters called out to him in solidarity. The judge presiding over the trial was designated by Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam to handle cases related to the national security law. The pro-democracy camp fears a tough ruling against Lai. Here in Japan, the number of new COVID infections hit a record 3,041 on Saturday. It's the first time the figure has risen above 3,000. Tokyo reported an all-time high of 621 cases. That tops the capital's previous daily peak of 602 on Thursday. The total number of people who have tested positive in Tokyo now stands at 46,745. People in the metropolis have expressed concern.
I'm worried. There are actually a lot of people out and about.
I'm no longer surprised at the numbers.
Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko says more people have tested positive as the number of tests has increased. She says a large number of elderly people continue to fall ill with the virus.
The Tokyo government will keep focusing on measures to prevent the elderly from becoming seriously ill.
Koike says the metropolitan government is considering whether to extend a request for bars and restaurants that offer alcohol to shorten their business hours. The deadline is to expire on Thursday. An owner of a shop dealing with restaurant supplies says the year-end period is their busiest season, but sales this year are down 30%.
In addition to a surge in new daily cases, the request for shorter business hours is hitting us hard. This year-end will be a difficult one for us.
Nationwide, the spread of the disease is straining medical services. The health ministry says hospitals in many places, including the prefectures of Tokyo, Osaka, and Hokkaido, are under pressure because of the high bed occupancy rate. Countries around the world are also bracing for further spikes in the number of cases ahead of the year-end travel season. The global tally of confirmed infections topped 70 million on Saturday, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University in the United States. A Japanese survivor of the 1945 atomic bombing of Hiroshima has delivered an online lecture about her experiences. Kajimoto Yoshiko spoke on Thursday at an event organized by the Hiroshima Peace Culture Foundation. Tour guides from UN facilities in New York and Geneva were among the listeners. The 89-year-old woman said one of her limbs was severely injured in the bomb attack. She was 14 years old at the time.
I saw a junior high school boy dying nearby. He was holding a severed arm. I still cannot forget the scared and sad expressions on his face.
Kajimoto said she lost her father and mother after the bombing. She stressed that the threat from atomic bombs is radioactivity. She said the participants should understand that survivors want nuclear weapons to be eliminated, and she asked them to pass along the things they learned from her lecture.
It was easier for me to explain to students and the people on the tour on how impactful and how emotional and how people were suffering and the struggles and the impacts of the bomb.
The UN plans to use stories shared by survivors during its tours. The tours are currently being given online due to the coronavirus pandemic. Relatives of Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea are urging the government to step up efforts to get all the victims back as soon as possible. They made the appeal on Saturday at a government-sponsored symposium in Tokyo. The event coincided with a week-long campaign to raise awareness about human rights abuses in North Korea.